Hello, CIQ leadership team. I am Jacqueline or Jackie Lauer, and this is my capstone. I am coming to you today by video as I have a nerve disorder that makes touching anything or standing on anything difficult. So quite a bit of pain. And my journey and part of my aspirations even through this program has been to understand how do I rework my business and myself in a new world to allow me to work less by facilitating in person. So this is part of that journey for me as well, and getting more and more comfortable on camera as an example. I am going to start off with section 1, of course, on the CIQ competencies. I will boldly share with you that as I entered the program, I wanted to learn new tools and methodologies to do the work that I have been doing. I've been working in leadership development and culture change transformations with organizations for 19 years. And I came at a lot of my work through 4 different coaching certifications like Coaches Training Institute, Emotional Intelligence, and even neuroscience for the past 6 to 7 years. But I just loved Judith's work, and I was interested in digging a little deeper in the methodologies and some of the frameworks that she uses to talk about this. So that was my aspiration, to round out the tools that I could use to help myself, my family, and my clients dig deeper. Around the competencies specifically for me, I admittedly felt a little cocky at the beginning. I thought, I'm good at this stuff. It's what brings my clients to me. So in preparing for the capstone, it was just a good knock me off my pedestal moment. So did the peer sessions as well. They certainly helped me to maintain my humility. I'm laughing because I thoroughly enjoy those moments when someone can catch me when my ego or pride gets in the way. And those are the most precious moments as all, when someone trusts you and you trust them enough to do that. So it gives me joy, which is why I'm probably giggling a little bit. So when I look at the competencies, for instance, there's a couple stories I want to share. Thinking about being open to influence. And so for me, one of the stories I've been sharing with a number of people is one of my clients, Clinton. I've been using him in speeches with his permission. He is essentially like a boss to me because I work as a mentor at a technology accelerator center 1 day a week. But at the same time, I'm also helping him develop his own leadership. So it's a complicated relationship because we're wearing 2 hats with each other. And what we noticed in a number of the mentor meetings is that when I spoke, Clinton had a certain sound for me and a certain look. And it went something like this. So digging deep into this work, I decided to have a chat with Clinton and say, I'm observing a certain behavior and sound. I'm making the assumption that I trigger you, and I'd like to know more. Are you interested? So long story short, the open to influence part was really digging deep in terms of my own judgments and assumptions about him while we engaged in that conversation, and getting really real with each other. One of the tools that helped me to do that was pulling out the dashboard with Clinton and say, you know, where are you with me on this, and where am I with you, and do you want to move to level 3 conversations more often, because I think we're pretty awesome when we get there. So I'm really proud of that, and it's a story that I've been able to share with many others to encourage them to do the same. I think about my work in terms of priming for trust. It's not something that I realized I did. I think I took for granted that most people trust in the way that I do, which is not true. So in those moments when you find out someone doesn't quite trust you the way you trust them, that's important to know. But also the value of learning to prime for trust, not just individually, but with whoever I'm with, or even in the context of the work that I'm creating with an organizational system. So one of my favorite moments was working with a whole organization of about 135 employees, and we talked about priming for trust. And what they did was they created a bracelet, you know, like those Live Strong bracelets. And on the bracelet, it said, "Be curious." And it was their way of embodying the listen to connect, not judge or reject. So I'm really proud of them for that. And I think I should order more bracelets and give it to more clients as we do this work. Asking questions for which you have no answer. I go back to the thought that being trained in emotional intelligence and in coaching, I believe that I was embodying this, I still believe that I embodied it well, but of course this course took me to that next level. So just really becoming aware of the times where I'm in my own way, where I'm unintentionally asking questions that I hate the word manipulation, but just really deepening my sense of when I've done that. But more importantly, I think about where I've done the best learning in this is consciously letting clients know that if they feel that I've done that, I want them to call me on it. And when they do that, we're deepening our alliance and trust with each other. So that's been really super cool. Oh, the listen to connect and not judge or reject is just something that comes out of my mouth all the time, of course, with attribute to Judith. And it's so connected to all the other ones. There's a fun one I wanted to share with you all. I'm trying to find it here. When I looked at my own aspirations, and I made it specifically around process and methodology, but one of the things that I learned was I wasn't necessarily good at the agility. So it's like the moving in and out with ease. And so sometimes when I'm doing a mediation, because I'll get into organizations, sometimes in a mediation will get me there. Even in a mediation, when I'm mediating two parties that are in conflict, I'll start to notice my own judgments about them. Like, Jesus, they're easily triggered, or they're in so much judgment of each other. I can hear my own thoughts floating through my head. It's like, okay, you're in judgment too, Jackie. And this is the moment where I think agility is so critical for me. And it's one of the things that I've been practicing or playing with as an experimenter is changing the geography of the room or of the body to allow space for new conversations to emerge. So, as an example, I'm sitting in the middle of a conversation, not a mediation, between two business partners yesterday, and it was the same pattern playing out over and over. So as a way of redirecting and refocusing, I asked them, can we just shift the way that we're sitting in this room? And they're like, okay. I said, just trust the process for me. And all we did was shift where we were sitting. So it changed the things where we're looking at. But what it did was invited a new pattern of behaving with each other. When the conversation was over, we took time to reflect on what I had done and why they think I had done it. So I'm playing with that stuff a little bit more. I'd love to share more, but we've got to keep this tight and crisp for you. Double clicking is one of my clients' favorite ones. It keeps coming up. Also because I work a lot in the tech space, it's a popular one. I think the story that I want to share most of all was this journey has taught me that I might be pretty good at this work when it comes to my clients, but I have a lot of work to do when it comes to raising my 13-year-old son. How's that for authentic? What I've enjoyed is sharing with Jack some of the stuff that I've been learning with CIQ. So if Jack feels judged or triggered by me, he'll say things like, Mom, you just released cortisol in me. And then he'll also say, I'm inviting you to double click on that, Mom. So it's brought a shared language to the two of us, which has been really useful. And in fact, he's in New Jersey right now with his Nana and his aunt, and they wrote me yesterday by text and said, what does he mean when he says double click on that? So I love that. Making the invisible visible. I'm going to go back to the story around the conversation yesterday when I was working with a client, and I asked the two of them to shift their chairs in the room so we could sit in different places as an invitation of changing our pattern or our way of communicating with each other. When we reflected on it at the end of the conversation or at the end of the meeting, what I wanted them to do was to map, sort of make the invisible visible, which is what was the pattern before we moved the chairs and what was the pattern after. It was my way of helping myself learn to recognize the patterns and use some tools to do that with clients as well. It's just me experimenting. Excuse me. The one thing I wanted to also share was deconstructing conversations, examining what was said and how it was said and the after effects. So I wrote in my notes Cuba with my sister. This past year, my father passed away of cancer, and we decided to organize a trip to take my mom to Cuba with my son and with my one sister. My sister and I are very, very close. She's like a mom to me. She's a best friend. She's a client. She's We have multiple hats that we wear with each other. She's trained in work similar to me. So, but we did have a fight, probably our third fight ever in my 50 years while we were in Cuba. And I remember watching my mom and my son look, what is happening? And them slowly backing away. What is, they could feel the tension and the harshness in our tones. And so away we went because we hadn't solved it. And of course, it ate away at me. And so I wrote her a little note 3 hours later to her phone and invited her to come to my little room in Cuba and said, I've got rum on the deck and let's deconstruct. And she knew exactly what I meant. So the two of us sipped some rum and we replayed the conversation to acknowledge what were the things that were said, how was it received, what was the impact, and then looked at how we would do it differently next time. So we now get a lot of laughs out of that conversation. The family especially goes, remember that moment when Linda and Jackie blew up at each other? I also like the idea of sharing with my mom and my son what deconstructing conversations means and how it was useful. And I know that they learned from that. For me, the last couple stories I want to share as it relates to competencies, one has to do with actually my embodiment story, or scaling my work, is the part that I'm going to talk about a lot around navigating with roadmaps. So laying out a co-created pathway was something that I want to do in terms of scaling my work with organizations on a large scale. I've done it with leadership teams, I've done it with individuals, but I really want to do more of this work in a bigger way with organizations as a whole. And so I worked with a group called Women's Crisis Services to create not a new vision, but also a new way of being together. So I look forward to giving you some more details on that at the last part of this. And then lastly, I just want to share a little bit about the co-regulation piece. So I'm realizing that I've gotten quite good at regulating self, right? Noticing when I'm triggered and settling down settling down my brain, and conscious efforts to release the oxytocin through things like gratitude when I'm triggered, etc. But I had a really great moment. I've been working on a culture transition with an organization that's in the hydro space. And so the CEO and the VPs have spent time with me over the last 2 years, and they decided to roll out the work I was doing across the whole organization. And I had a bunch of union workers that were usually in their trucks all day long, who were now stuck with me in a training room for 2 days. And they were clearly not happy to be there. But what was challenging about that moment is, for the first time in my 19 years, I found myself angry. Like literally angry, because they were not listening to connect with each other, let alone me. There was inappropriate behavior, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, they would choose to fart really loud to interrupt the day. I mean, it was offensive. And I could feel like hives breaking out of my neck. And I'm like, man, I'm angry. And I'm supposed to be teaching this stuff. So I pulled out the dashboard in an attempt to co-regulate with each other. I pulled out the dashboard and I said, here's where I am with you. I'm in resistance mode with you, and I'm feeling a very low level of trust, and my gut tells me you are too. Where are you guys with me? And of course it's like, our CEO brought you in and we don't trust him, therefore we don't trust you. You disrespect our roles. And so they just had at it, and I just gave them the space to just really share so I could try to understand and stand in their perspectives. And then we created a roadmap for the 2 days, like, how far can we build our trust? Do we believe is possible? And what I loved about that day was the tool provided me with an opportunity to co-regulate, to share a little bit of the work to a room that wasn't necessarily interested, but they were certainly interested in being more comfortable while they were stuck there with me. So a challenging story. At the end of the 2 days, I got a couple hugs, like, bring it in, where the guys would hug me and thank me for the 2 days. Some of them didn't go as far as a hug, but I would get the nods as they left the room, like, pretty good, that wasn't bad, thank you, ma'am, that kind of thing. So I deem it a success. And of course, I've seen them since, so they're like, you held up pretty good, ma'am. That was a tough day we gave you. It's like, yeah, you tested me. So those are some of the stories in terms of the competencies and how I'm embodying the work more and more every single day. I'm loving watching the ripple effect on those around me in my personal and business life, and I look forward to sharing more in section 2.